would you like to be able to heal your body with nutrient-dense food? Elizabeth Bruckner will tell us how. She's an author and acupuncturist. So, Elizabeth, tell us, how can entrepreneurs heal their body with nutrient-dense food? And what kind of illnesses or ailments can be healed with nutrient-dense food? Heal Podcast with Lily Patasco shares longevity and anti-aging techniques to stay young forever, increase energy, overcome addiction, and live your longest, best life ever. Shared by world's most innovative, alternative, and traditional health thought leaders, healers, and doctors. Discover quantum healing strategies to heal your mind, body, and soul.
Thanks for having me on, Lily. It's great to speak to you. And I would preface this answer with another question, which is, what ailments can you not heal with nutrient-dense food? Because a lot of times chronic illness, things that have been here for a long time that are difficult to diagnose by Western medicine practitioners, if someone's gone to the doctor and they can't tell them what it is, typically that's a gut health issue. A lot of times the body's not able to absorb proper nutrients, or they're eating things that the body is not able to process. And so toxins are getting put into the joints, the lungs, fat tissues. Some of it becomes cancer. And so typically when we're talking about stress-related disorders and autoimmune and immune disorders and chronic illnesses, that's what nutrient-dense food can heal. I work from the preface that I learned in graduate school when I was studying Chinese medicine and acupuncture and herbology, which was trust the needles, but I would go one step further, the acupuncture needles. I would say trust the body's innate ability to heal itself. All we need to do is give it the proper space and the proper energy, and nutrient-dense food is that energy. It's kind of like you need gasoline for your car. You need nutrient-dense food for a healthy body.
Thank you. So give us an example of one particular illness that could be healed by nutrient-dense food. And let's just take the full blueprint of how we would go about healing it. Can you choose one particular ailment or illness?
Absolutely. So there's a book called Gut and Physiology Syndrome, which will actually walk you through the biological facts and figures of how this works, but we'll walk through it just kind of for a layman's overview, a 30,000 foot overview. Let's say someone has chronic osteoarthritis. So they have arthritis in their joints, in their bones, and there's a lot of pain. Let's say this particular patient has chronic back pain, and maybe they weren't even diagnosed with arthritis. They're just told, we don't know what we can do for you. Perhaps surgery would work. You can heal things like chronic back pain with acupuncture for sure, and also nutrient-dense food. So one of the things that you're doing when you're healing the gut is you're sealing the lining of your gut so that toxins aren't getting absorbed. Let's say you eat something with seed oils or highly processed, or maybe some refined sugar, and it goes into your gut. And instead of your body going, oh, okay, this isn't going to work for me, let's get it out of the system through the rectum, it might actually leach into your bloodstream or perhaps your organs and sometimes your joints. And so a lot of times the pain that we have with joints is from inflammation and also having particles in your joints that are going undetected. If you start doing something like detoxifying with nutrient-dense foods, as well as detox baths and detox enemas, you can then flush out the system and allow it to start working, kind of unclogging the drains. So in acupuncture, we often say, where there is no free flow, there is pain, and where there is free flow, there is no pain. And so when you're doing a detox and when you're healing up that gut, you're kind of getting that pipe, that long digestive system is just a big tube that goes from your mouth all the way out through your rectum. When we get that in order, then the body knows how to process things very well, and there is no more pain because there is free flow.
Thank you. So let's take the example of someone who has osteoarthritis. Yes. That typically means that they have pain in their wrists, or where do they have pain?
Well, we could say it could be anywhere in the joints. And so osteo means bone, and arthritis means arthritis. The articulation is any joint, and then itis always means inflammation. So in this case, we would be saying osteoarthritis in the lower back. And so what happens is if you're having nutrient-dense food and you're flushing out those toxins, then your body's inflammation, so inflammation are we videotaping this as well? I'll try to explain it.
Yes.
But if we look at a channel of like around your joint and inflammation happens, inflammation will then squeeze the channel. If the channel is like a fist, it'll squeeze that, and that inflammation will cause the nerves to have pressure. When the nerves have pressure, pain is induced. If we reduce the inflammation, then that tube, or in this case, my hand, will then release, and then it's got free flow, and the nerve endings don't have pressure on them, and the pain is reduced.
Ah, very interesting. Okay, so let's take this person with osteoarthritis.
Mm-hmm.
What would they do differently in terms of food so that they can start healing their body?
That's a really good question. My book talks a lot about taking tiny, tiny steps, small daily habits. So what I'm going to tell you is an overview, but I don't want listeners to go, okay, I have to do these 10 things like right now. Instead, I would say pick one of the things that we're mentioning in this podcast episode and start with that, and start with bringing a little bit of joy and levity to it. It doesn't have to be arduous work. It doesn't have to be difficult. It can be easy and fun and delightful, actually. So one of the main premises is a lot of times we have habits that give us a great deal of pain. So high sugar intake, like Americans, I don't know how it's happening in England, but Americans love their refined sugar. They're putting it in everything. It's also in a lot of processed foods. And a lot of people will say, cut out sugar, and do these 5 steps: cut out sugar, cut out carbs, have nutrient dense food, start cooking your own food, start growing it, which is part of the homesteading, but there's many spokes to the homesteading wheel, which we can talk about later. What I recommend is picking one small habit that you can kind of add to another habit. For example, if you want to cut out sugar, what I would recommend is every time you have sugar, have a high fat content and have high protein. And what that does is it slows down the absorption of the sugar, and there's a better chance of it not getting into your blood system, not causing inflammation. I myself, if I can make a perfect world and take my patients and just wave a magic wand, that wand would make it so that they never crave sugar. But that's not always the case. So I would say first and foremost, start adding fat and protein. There's a book called Little Sugar Addicts, which I really love. And it's just a really easy way to get used to creating a life that doesn't necessarily depend on sugar or that sugar habit, and helps you get off of it. And so fat and protein are one of those things. So once we've done that, let's say we've reduced our sugar intake. Now the body needs help processing that. And so the way that we process that is we include nutrient-dense foods. One of the other things that you could do, even before you get rid of sugar, if this is the one that kind of feels like it highlights to you, or it feels, as a listener, it feels like this is something you might be able to do, is you can start creating meat stock. So meat stock is just taking a crock pot, throwing some knuckle bones in it, maybe some chicken feet, or whatever the meat is. I usually take a baked chicken, the carcass of after I've eaten it all, throw it in, throw 2 chicken feet in, and then let it heat overnight on low for 8 hours with a little salt and maybe some onions. And then in the morning, I take a ladle and I just drink that broth. And that's a part of my everyday existence. And when you're healing your gut, doing that 3 times a day, just 3 cups of that a day, can tremendously help with candida overgrowth or things that cause the inflammation that causes pain. So those are 2 things that you could do. You could reduce the sugar intake simply by slowing it down in your digestive tract with fat and protein, or you can do meat stock, which is really easy. It's really cheap, which is what I like. And it's different than bone broth. It's got a lot more collagen, and collagen is one of those magical substances that help heal the body.
Thank you. Tell us more about when you're eating sugar and adding fat and protein to it. Give us an example of, let's say, if I'm eating cake that clearly has sugar in it, what would I eat with it to reduce its impact? Give me an example of fat and give me an example of protein that I can eat with it to reduce the impact of eating so much sugar.
That's a great question. So I'll give you 2 examples, one with cake and then one with ice cream. So with cake, I would make sure that you're eating a cake that has natural fats in it. So not a low fat or not a fat-free cake. That is from the 80s and that is outdated, and it's not helpful because the sugar just goes right into your system. So if I were doing cake and there wasn't a lot of protein in cake, typically there might be I would, if I was making the cake, add more eggs to it to increase the protein and increase the cholesterol. And the cholesterol is a version of fat that's going to help your brain. But another thing that you could do, let's just say you don't know where that cake's coming from. You don't know if it's low fat or if it's high protein. What you could do is just add a snack with it. So you could have a hard boiled egg, like have that as part of the snack. I'm going to have a big old piece of cake, but I'm also going to have an egg with a little bit of olive oil or some butter. Another example, what I like to really hone in on is ice cream. A lot of people are buying fat-free, sugar-free ice cream. I say, if you can't make your own, which is, fantastic and not as difficult as people would think, if you can't make your own, buy full fat ice cream. Make sure that it's got the full fat in it. And then you can have like a cheese stick with it. I mean, I know that's a lot of dairy, but some way to have a little bit of protein and a lot of fat. And I think we've just not allowed ourselves to enjoy fat. What I will tell you, the secret of the success of adding fat and protein is that everything tastes a lot better. So when you have a high fat ice cream, that's way more satiating and way more satisfying to the taste buds because it coats your taste buds and then it also gives you a feeling of satiation. You will actually eat less of a fat full cake or with a little bit of protein than you would if you did fat-free ice cream, for instance.
Thank you. For those entrepreneurs that have, let's say, inflammation in their body or a condition like osteoarthritis, what impact will it have following this exact advice that you just gave now about reducing sugar or coating it with protein and and fat, as in adding some protein and fat to it to reduce its impact? What impact will that have on the actual illness or ailment that someone would have?
Well, typically it will slow down the absorption of sugar, which white sugar, a lot of healthcare practitioners will call it white poison. So it'll slow down the absorption of poison in your body, and it'll actually allow that going through your body to course out and digest faster. So it slows down the absorption like into your bloodstream, et cetera. And what that will cause as the outcome is less pain, less inflammation, better ability to move your body, less side effects from it. Now, I really love to couple, especially with pain issues, I love to couple it with acupuncture because that also helps reduce the inflammation. But we're just focusing on creating as little damage as possible with things like white sugar and white flour.
Thank you. I'm a big coffee addict, and I usually have it with sugar. And sometimes I have as much as 5 coffees a day, and I consider that a reduced amount versus what I used to have, maybe up to 10 coffees a day. What would you have someone like me do to reduce the impact of that acidity on the body, aside from just cutting down on actual coffee?
Right. I love that you're asking questions about tailoring it to your life. Because if I were to say to you, Lily, just never drink coffee again, you'd be like, thanks so much. And then you'd get off this podcast and you'd go have your normal habit of coffee. So we need to find ways that what are our starting points? First of all, it's a huge success if you went from 10 cups of coffee to 5 cups of coffee. You've reduced it by 50%. That's inspiring. The second thing that I do with coffee in particular, because I love it myself, my family, we don't have coffee in the house. So we don't have, we're not drinking it a lot, but once a week I go out and I have my coffee at a coffee house. And what I do is I bring something that's high fat and sweet. So I will take 48-hour fermented cream that I fermented with kefir. So it's kind of like a sour cream, but I put honey in it. And then I don't put it in my coffee. I drink a sip of the coffee and then I drink a little spoon of the honeyed cream. Let me tell you, it's absolutely delicious because you have the bitterness and then you have the sweet, but it's doing a few things. Number one, it's giving me that fat that I talk about, right? We don't want to put anything sweet in us without some fat, and the cream actually has a little bit of protein in it as well. And then secondly, the honey is antibacterial, antimicrobial. So it's a medicine that you're having. Now, if I put the honey in the coffee, which if that's where you are, like that's all you can do, that's better than sugar. But when you put it in hot coffee, it will kill all of those happy live microbes. And so we really want to keep them alive, which is why I keep it separate. So I get the fermentation I get all the happy beans from the fermentation of the cream, and I get the happy beans from the honey, and then mixing it together, it tastes delicious with my coffee.
Thank you. What other habits should an entrepreneur, consider to implement in order to reduce inflammation and heal their body?
Well, I really love suggesting meat stock, as I said. I love fermented foods. That's one of the best ways to reduce inflammation. You have to take it slowly, though, when you're doing fermented foods like homemade sauerkraut, or you're buying sauerkraut from a really a sustainable source and a source that has safe ingredients in it. but I recommend that you do it slowly, not quickly. And so that means maybe you'll have just a quarter teaspoon and see how your body responds. One of my favorite facts is that a spoonful of sauerkraut has more probiotics in it than an entire bottle of expensive probiotics. So if you can manage to have fermented foods with every meal, you can do an amazing job of giving yourself the probiotics that you need. And then with kefir, it actually creates colonies, like healthy colonies in your gut. So you're feeding it, but then you're also keeping it in your body. And then when you're not having the fermented food in terms of kefir, it's still helping kind of create a healthy microbiome, which is the environment in your gut. And that's happening through a very happy battle between the good and the bad guys. You're helping feed the good guys. Another thing in terms of how entrepreneurs can reduce this inflammation is really what I share in my book, The Homesteader Mindset, which is you can create a homesteader mindset wherever you are. So a lot of entrepreneurs are living in urban areas. You can create a homesteader mindset. It's all about intentional self-resilience. It's a soft, mindful way of living, and we can do that all the time. When we slow down and we have a mindful practice, whether it be cooking your dinner at night, or for me, it's petting my dog after I've made some juices and I'm drinking them. I'm just giving myself 5 minutes. That's reducing my stress response. So it's helping my nervous system get back into rest and restore. And rest and restore is exactly that. It helps your body rest. It helps it restore. It's no longer got the adrenaline pumping and the cortisol pumping. It's kind of saying, okay, right now we're safe, we're doing well. And with that, you can help create a healthy loop for reducing the inflammation.
Thank you. You mentioned, I think, about 10 methods that an entrepreneur could use in order to heal their body based on your homesteader book. Tell us first, what is a homesteader?
So the homesteader, there's two definitions. One is the original definition, which was in 1862, they started having homesteading acts in the United States. And what that was the federal government gave away 270 million acres of land to private owners. A lot of them were big corporations that just it was a wealth grab. But there were a few people that were pioneers. They were mom and pop kettle. They lived in Connecticut. They moved out west. They got their 40 acres and a mule. They made their own clothes. It's kind of like if you've ever seen the TV show Little House on the Prairie. It was really big when I was growing up, and it was very pioneer world, right? You're using a rifle to fight off bears. And that is no longer what homesteading is. Homesteading now is helping busy people create a sustainable life. And that can happen in the suburbs where I live. That can happen in an urban area. There's one person in Los Angeles that lives in a highly populated part of Los Angeles on a tiny little property. And his family creates, I think, enough food for 4 to 5 people for an entire year. Just in the city. That's crazy. And then there's also people in the rural area that are doing it. And that's typically what people think. But for me, I'm reminded that modern homesteading really has a lot of spokes to the wheel. And so we decide what we want to do. And so for me, I don't make sourdough bread, which everybody thinks is a homesteading thing. But I do have edible landscaping in my suburban yard. I do create a lot of fermentation. I create my own cleaning products with a 30-second recipe. And there are 8 tools actually that help us with a homesteader mindset. Now, the book will go into how to create a homesteader mindset. These are just 8 tools that help people live a healthier life. I'm going to read them out to you, and then I will explain some of it. One is literature, meditation, telephone, prayer, writing, mentorship, service, and gathering. So literature is, and if you can touch one of these tools per week, you will see an exponential increase in your health. Literature is usually things that are uplifting. Sometimes it can just be diversion, but a lot of times I will suggest to my patients that they have some sort of motivational reading book that they just read a page from it each day, and it just gives them insight into how they would like to live their lives. Prayer and meditation are kind of twofold. In meditation, you're listening to your higher self, your higher power, what you consider a higher power or God. And with prayer, you're speaking to your higher self, your higher power, God, or whatever you would consider a God. And I think that's a really important two for deal. Telephone is calling friends and staying connected to your community, checking up on your aunt that wasn't doing so well, or calling your friend to tell them that you're having a good day and you want to celebrate something. Writing, I recommend journaling, and again, once a week, not every single day. If you do, I do it every night, but you don't have to. And when I write, I'm just processing what's going on. It's kind of like a decluttering of my mind. Mentorship, I think, is really important, and it's something that we have gotten away from because we have a lot of YouTube experts, but there's something to be said about going to someone's house and going, you do this, can you show me how? It creates a stronger connection to community. You learn more. I think even for you as a woman that helps published authors, right? You are a mentor to others. And when you ask someone else for input, you are then allowing them the opportunity to be of service. And that brings up service, which is, it could be volunteering, it could be helping out in your neighborhood, but there's this sense of fulfillment. A lot of times they talk about the population in blue zones that live to be 110. Well, one of their secrets is they're always fulfilled. They don't retire. They might lessen their workload, but they're always a part of the community helping. And that creates longevity, and they're useful. Their body's like, oh, I'm supposed to be used, and then I will. And then lastly, gatherings. I think this is really important to have in-person gatherings, whether it be at your home or you find a group that has like-minded people showing up, getting hugs, shaking hands, making eye contact, seeing people nod in agreement, hearing people's stories. Those things are so essential to wellness. And so again, I mentioned these 8, which are really big, and people might be like, oh, I can't do all of them. Well, just pick one. Can you start working on making a telephone call to someone you love once a week and just checking in on them and telling them how you are? Pick one that works for you. For literature is a really easy one to start with. Pick an inspirational book and read a paragraph a day.
Thank you. In terms of eliminating toxicity, is that included in your method? And if yes, how can entrepreneurs use eliminating toxicity as a method to heal their body?
Yes and no. So my book talks a lot about the habit formation of things that are important to you. So my second book will be about healing foods in the kitchen, because I think people don't realize the power that they have in their kitchen and the fact that your body can heal itself from terrible chronic illness, terrible illnesses that we think have no hope. So what my book talks about is how to identify, number one, what your goal is, what your first priority is. And in this case, we're talking about reducing toxicity in a person's health and in a person's body. And so once you identify that, then you have to look for, and in the book it talks about this. Now I have a free gift that I'll talk about later, which is a daily habit tracker. And it teaches you how to create a healthy, easy, successful habit, and then how to track it. So that's available on my website, and I'll give you the link in just a little bit. But when we talk about mindset, you can pick anything. So let's say you want to reduce toxicity. What's the first thing that you're going to do? Okay, I've got back pain and it limits my ability to drive to work. So what am I going to do to focus on that? I'm going to take a 5-minute corner of my life, and I'm going to take that 5 minutes and focus on how I can learn about driving with back pain. And then I might go on YouTube, or I might read a book on back pain, and I'm only reading 5 minutes worth, but then I'm getting ideas, I'm taking notes, and then I'm picking something. Oh, acupuncture is really incredible for back pain. It's the number one thing that we treat in the clinic. Well, I might try acupuncture. Or, oh, this other woman talked about meat stocks or reducing sugar. I might try that. And then the book walks you through how to create a habit that's not that difficult, that you can do when you don't have time, when you don't have a lot of money, and when you think it's too complicated. We can make it really simple. And then if it's simple, it's going to be doable.
Thank you. What are your 10 commandments? And I'm sure you've probably already said most of them, for healing your body with nutrient-dense food. Is there anything we missed from what your 10 commandments are?
I think we covered most of it. There are 3 other things that I do in terms of creating the actual goal that's going to change your life. The first is pick a corner, which we just talked about, like inflammation, driving in the car is painful. That's my corner. That's what I'm going to work on. Then we use a habit tracker to create that habit. And then we immerse ourselves in found time. So a lot of times I hear people say, I don't have time. There's no way I can make this change. I don't have time. But what we do is found time is the time that you have where you reach for distraction. So let's say you're in the line at the bank and it's really, really long, or you have to wait at the doctor's office and you have a half hour to wait. What can you do during that found time that can get you towards your goal? And you'll have a list of those that you're doing. And then lastly, immersing yourself in that found time. So For example, let's say you were working on chronic back pain and driving comfortably. You might start looking at a TikTok video of someone that helps you sit appropriately in the car and talks about alignment. Maybe it's someone that works with the spine on a daily basis. So you're going to save that person as your found time. And then when you're in the line at the bank, you're going to look at that and you're going to go, maybe I could try this particular, maybe he put a cushion under his tush and tilted his pelvic a little bit. Maybe I'll try that. And so step by step, you're doing that. So I would say pick a corner, immerse yourself in found time, and then lastly, make it a priority. And the way that you make it a priority is you make it fun and you make it delightful.
Thank you. Are there any other habits, aside from the habit tracker, which I do think is very fascinating, that entrepreneurs could implement that would allow them to make a dramatic change over the long run?
Yes, I love that you asked kind of like a broad stroke question, because you can use these particular tips with anything. It could be if you want more sales, if you want to market better, if you want a more successful business, or if you want to reduce your inflammation. And those two things are creating habits, because a lot of times I hear people say, "Oh, I have willpower, but come Saturday when the kids have cookies and cream, I can't help but eat it as well." And so what they're doing is they're using an element of their body, willpower, that is finite. It has a beginning, middle, and end. It's gonna run out. Whereas a routine is everlasting. So once you get into a routine, it's in a different part of your brain. It's more closer to the brainstem, and it's not even thinking. And the way that you create routines, here too, there are a few ways, but I don't want it to be a 5-hour podcast. We'll keep it short. Two of them are habit stacking and habit chaining. So habit stacking is when you take a habit that already exists and you add another habit to it. That's what I talked about in terms of like standing in line at the bank. Let's say you wash dishes every day. You are the person that washes dishes in your house. Well, you can then habit stack and put a podcast on about back pain and about inflammation and back pain. And you can be listening and learning while you're doing something menial like washing your dishes. The second one is habit chaining, which Lindsay Williams, who is a polyglot, a woman that speaks a lot of languages, she talks about this in terms of language learning. And what she does is she will habit chain, where a habit happens, a habit that you do every single day. Let's say it's brushing your teeth, right? And so I'm going to brush my teeth every single day. And then the chain that I'm going to put on is right after that, I'm going to have a glass of water with a little bit of salt to kind of even out my electrolytes and make sure that I'm hydrated before I even have breakfast. And that habit chain is very easy. It's, once you get it going, you're not even thinking about it. I brush my teeth, I have a glass of water. It's not something that I have to get up from and stop my task. I make it really easy and I connect it to things that are already existing in your life.
Thank you. Tell us where entrepreneurs can find you and more information about what you do.
Thank you. You can find my habit tracker at my website, which is www.createwellnessproject.com/gift, GIFT. And you can also buy my book and then leave a review if you love it. And you can find that on Amazon or anywhere else you buy books. And that is called The Homesteader Mindset.
Thank you. Follow me for more interviews with world's most innovative health change makers to live your healthiest life ever.